Hey, what's up, everyone? Mike Lowe here, and we are going to be going through the second offseason in our Lions Connected Franchise Mode rebuild. And it's going to be a lot different, really, than the approach we took in the first season, where there was a lot more unknowns, a lot more unpredictability. It's going to be a little bit of a different story here with this 2023 Lions team that we're looking to put together, starting with free agency. I'm going to talk through just kind of my general process, why I'm willing to spend money in certain places and why I'm not willing to spend money in other places, how to kind of balance being aggressive with being conservative, and a lot of other different things here in regards to the off season. We will be talking through just kind of the general draft strategy and really just kind of all things leading up to the 2023 draft, which is the second draft here in this Madden franchise. We're using real life draft classes. There's a lot to go over, so let's dive into it. So let's go through the players that I am offering contracts to, and perhaps equally as important, players that I'm not offering contracts to. As you look on the screen here, you can see these are the top available free agents heading into the 2022 offseason. So this is after the second completed season in Madden 22. Of course, these will be guys that we would sign to start with us in the 2023 season. And there are some big names here at the top. Quentin Nelson, Tyreek Hill, Deron Payne, Rashawn Gary, and so on. Some of these players you can see we have offered contracts to. They have the yellow icon next to their name there on the left. And let's just kind of talk through the strategy that I have, especially for a team that's bad or a team that you're probably rebuilding. As far as just, again, free agency approach and strategy. So, of course, checking cap room is very, very important. You can see there at the top, that's what I have left based on the existing contracts that I have out. So still a lot of cap room, 32 and a half left. You want to kind of see your total cap. There's a couple places you can do that. You can actually just click on the signed free agent screen. And then this here will show you your total available cap room, 46.71. That does not include there's a portion that they will kind of keep to the side for your estimated draft cost. And again, that will go up the more picks you have, and certainly the higher picks you have. So as much as you may be tempted to, have a tankathon kind of thing, get the first overall pick, there are some disadvantages to that, especially in a Madden draft, because sometimes the top player is not always, and just like real life, not always the best player in that draft. But the only guarantee you're going to get from that is that he will be the highest paid player in the draft. And so when you think about budget and kind of skimming off the top, I mean, $1 million here, $1 million there, it does start to add up quite a bit, where you might have that 46 million drop down to more of the 40 range each year. And again, it just starts to add up. So it can have a big impact. So we were a pretty bad team. We were the worst offensive team now for 2 seasons in a row. Our defense actually improved a lot. But what's interesting, if you look at the players I'm offering contracts to, it's a lot of defensive players. Deron Payne, Rashawn Gary, Mike Edwards, Cleveland Farrell, and Amani Hooker. A lot of defensive players. Now, the reason is it's not because it's not necessarily a strategy, but it's sort of letting free agency come to me as opposed to forcing anything. There are some top offensive players here, Quentin Nelson, Tyreek Hill, like I mentioned. Let's talk about why I'm not signing these two guys, or at least not trying to sign these two guys. Number one, Quentin Nelson's a fantastic player. He's a great pull blocker. He would fit really, really well in our scheme, especially at left guard. But we do have Jonah Jackson, who you can see there on the screen. He's just 26. He's a star dev. He's a good player for us. And I just philosophically don't believe you need to pay guards massive amounts of money, especially in Madden. You can get by with decent guards. We also have some pretty good depth there with Cleveland. We also we have some other guys that are on the team that I think can do just fine holding down the guard position. So we have some depth there. So it's nothing that I really need to overspend and get myself into trouble later on. Quentin Nelson's still at a pretty decent age, 27. But again, a team on the rise, a team that very likely is going to be having a rookie quarterback here, pick number 2 overall. Is Quentin Nelson going to be around by the time that quarterback's ready to really kind of make a run in the playoffs? It's tough. And on a 3-year deal, he'd probably be leaving right at that point anyway. So it's just not something that I really wanted to invest in for all the reasons I just mentioned, right? Positional value, dollars being spent. Tyreek Hill, again, great player. I mean, again, the speed, of course, I mean, jumps out at you. I am definitely looking for a receiver with good release like this. It's something we just haven't had here on this Lions roster. But there's two reasons really why I'm not going after Tyreek Hill. I guess three. One, of course, he's super, super expensive, but he's 29 years old. And I'm not just somebody who just subscribes to the whole like, oh, once they're 30, they're trash. This guy's rated high enough that he's going to play into his 30s, no problem, and still be pretty good. But you're looking at a guy who's going to cost, close to $25 million a year. And that's fine. But for me, receiver, it's not really a position like I want to develop a guy who's a 97 overall, no question. I don't know if I want to pay for one on the open market just because they're not somebody who touches the ball every down. Tyreek Hill is going to make an impact on most plays. There's no question about it. But again, he's 29 with a rookie quarterback. He wouldn't hurt the development of my rookie quarterback, but is this really the move that we want to make when we start to position ourselves? So let's go ahead 4 years later, even 3 years later. Do we want a $25 million receiver who's 33? Obviously, is going to be worse than he is now and still be a good player. But is that really where we want to be spending $25 million? And sure, you could cut him, but now you're just wasting $10, $15 million in bonus money or whatever it is that you've signed him to. The other reason I just frankly am not a big fan of having my number one receiver be 5'9", especially a deep threat. I want a guy who, if it's not a great throw, can jump up, make a play on it, even just to try and break up the interception. Tyreek Hill's so good at getting open deep, that's fine. But when you think Tyreek Hill and all the highlights you've seen of him with the Chiefs, it's not the 29-year-old Tyreek Hill, right? So there's one of just many reasons why, I'm going to be passing on Tyreek Hill and Quentin Nelson. Now, Deron Payne, if you've watched my videos before, you know there's something I'm pretty obsessed with on defense, and that's getting pass rush up the middle. And I feel Deron Payne can do this. He's 26. I'm offering him essentially what's going to come out to be about $17.5 million per year. That'll be a little bit less in the front of the contract and a little bit more at the back of the contract. But this is a guy, he can really get the job done. However, even speed rushing. So even like on third and long plays, you can put him in the middle there. And 78 is not a bad speed rush rating at all. And he'll be able to do that. Of course, power rushing, run stopping. This guy can play every single down. When you sign big contracts, I would highly recommend making sure that the player's injury rating is preferably at least 90, if not more. So 97, again, this is a guy who fits all the criteria for me of I can offer him big money. I'm not worried about the risk of this. This guy should be healthy. He should play, and he should play every single down for us. So really excited about Deron Payne. One of the other considerations when I was looking at Deron Payne is $17.5 million may seem like a lot of money for a defensive tackle, and I was paying him, or at least making an offer that's higher than the second and third place team quite noticeably. But the other thing I looked at is the defensive tackles throughout the league. So Deron Payne is 25, he's a 90 overall. Here we have Kenny Clark, he's 27 and a 91 overall, but he's making 21 and a half or so, 22 the year after that. It's a deal. Deron Payne is a bargain when you look at him. If we kind of start clicking through and looking for some other, defensive tackles that are maybe rated, say up in the 90s or so, I'm sure we'll get to some more. There are quite a few. There's a lot of positional value that we're going to see as you just even click through some of these guys who are rated in the 80s. So here's Vita Vea, for instance. So again, he is way north of 17.5 per year on his contract, still with the original team who drafted him. And so, again, he's a 96 overall, so you're getting a noticeable improvement, but he's also 2 years older than Deron Payne. So to me, I have no problem. What may seem like an overspend. Here is a 29-year-old, 94 overall, 20 million this year. So 17.5, again, not a bad deal. DeForest Buckner, 29-year-old. About 20 million a year remaining on his contract. So the 17.5 million was really no problem at all for me to put into a position that I feel is just one of the core spots on a strong defense, and that is getting pass rush up the middle. Now, Rashawn Gary is the only other player that's really even above an 85 that we are offering a contract to at this point. So when you have cap space, it doesn't mean you have to spend it right away. And it doesn't mean that you have to fix all of your problems in 1 year. So you don't need to force stuff, right? Again, Tyreek Hill to me would be a forced signing. Rashawn Gary is not an exact fit for us, especially at left outside linebacker. Truthfully, I don't want a linebacker that weighs 277 pounds and can't cover anybody. But he would be a defensive lineman for us. He would fit the power rushing scheme that Dan Campbell likes here in Madden if we were to put him at left end, which is essentially where he would be playing. And it's a position that we really need to upgrade. Our defensive line has been pretty rough. And so getting him with Deron Payne next to him, I mean, this completely transforms this defensive line into one of the best units in football. And so if we were able to land these two guys, this is great. Now, this is an expensive contract. This is $25 million a year, but the guy's 25 years old. Maybe we get 3-4 years out of it. Financially, this might be a contract we need to get away from, but we'll have to see. And again, I think right now it's just it's a fit on a number of different levels. It's a position of need, and what's nice is you're not going to find a guy like this in the draft, right? There's a reason why I'm not going after maybe, a guy. I'm sorry, like look at some of the other ends here, or like left outside linebackers or whatever you want to look at positions. You got guys down here, but you can find guys in the draft that are rated around this, right? 71, 73, that kind of thing, and they're not 28 years old. They're not 30, which, by the way, you can see we cut Flowers in a Quora. But you can find guys like this. I mean, certainly, a 28-year-old 69 overall here that Washington's bidding on, that seems crazy to me. You can always get those guys after the draft as well, or even in late free agency or at the start of the season. So Rashawn Gary, it's not going to be somebody that you can find in the draft, even at 25. Are there players potentially that would be this highly rated at 25 in the draft? Sure, but again, that's like buying a lotto ticket and using it as a retirement plan. That's not a good strategy. So Rashawn Gary is kind of the smart pick here, really, even though it is going to be an expensive contract. I also won't lose sleep if we say you only get one of these guys. I really hope Deron Payne is the one we do get. This is why I'm kind of overpaying him quite a bit, but if we get both, great. It's a great problem to have. If we don't get Rashawn Gary, there are other, ways we can kind of make this work still. But really looking to upgrade the defensive line here is a huge push for us. There are some other guys that I'm looking at on the line, but there are no contract offers to like a JJ Watt right now. No other AI team has put a bid in. So there's a bit of a risk there because sometimes they will sign with guys that just kind of happen as you advance to that next week, but I'm willing to take that chance. And we'll see if we lose out on Rashawn Gary, I might pivot to JJ Watt for a 1-year deal, say around $8 million or so, if no one else is bidding on him. So, and that's fine. Even on a rebuilding team, I'll take a 34-year-old for a year who can still ball. I'm not going to go after a guy like Dean Lowry. He's actually a scheme fit as a power rusher, but he's only got kind of one thing working for him. He's not a really good run stopper. He's not a speed rusher at all. So it just kind of limits his impact for this team. It's just he's kind of a 1 or 2 down, or he's a 2 down player basically, and it's just I don't really know if I want to commit to a player like that. Now it's only a $4.5 million or so dollar deal. So again, maybe we'll see if I lose out on these other defensive ends. I mean, I would maybe consider Dean Lowry, but for now, I'm not interested. And 2, there's no reason to force something that you're not interested in. I can probably find a guy like this in late free agency before the season starts. A lot of these players, who are like high 20s in age, kind of high to mid 70s in rating, these guys are all over the place in Madden and really even in real life. So you don't need to be just spend crazy. You can find Dean Lowry's anywhere and find guys like that. So to kind of wrap up the defensive line talk, I mentioned we are looking at Cleveland Farrell. He's a guy I'm a little concerned about his injury history. You can see it's kind of borderline. If I go and show you his injury rating, it's 87, but we do have that little bump, so it'll bring it up 5 or 4 points. I think it is up to 91, so we should be okay. At the same time, for 2 years, I mean, $7 million, it's a little high for him. Honestly, I'm kind of overpaying for him, but he might end up being a rotational piece, which of course would certainly make him overpaid as a rotational piece. But a 2-year deal won't kill us. Even if I ended up cutting him after 1 year, something like this, we can live with it. It's not going to be terrible. It'll be $3.5 million in bonus money lost. And we have the cap space right now. So this is kind of it's not really a risky signing. It is overpriced, in my opinion, but I'm willing to take it because we need guys who can bring some speed, especially on third downs. When you use like your sub packages, so like the rushing defensive or rushing left end, rushing right end, those ratings are drawn from the speed rush rating. And so having a power rusher, that's fine, but a 290-pound defensive end isn't always going to get home on 3rd and long, right? I mean, those are kind of kind of all-in-one jack of all trades kind of defensive ends, really nice players. But on 3rd and 13, I want speed rusher guys all over the defensive line. I want them getting after the quarterback. That's going to allow you to drop more guys in the coverage and things like that. So anyway, long and short of it is Cleveland Farrell, another defensive lineman we're bringing in. And again, if you look at just the top of our list here, it's very heavy on defensive line, right? Gary's going to play the line for us. Deron Payne is also going to play the line, and then Cleveland Farrell, as I just mentioned. So the last thing I can say about that is, what does that do for our kind of 5th round pick who burst onto the scene last year? And that's O'Shawn Mathis, who had a dev upgrade, which I've now turned off, as I've mentioned. But he had an upgrade and had a really hell of a rookie year. So just 23-75. But this guy's a 4-3 defensive end. He doesn't really have a place on this team. The only place he really has in the system right now is to put him at left outside linebacker, which is where this 3-4 defense that Dan Campbell likes will utilize a speed rusher. So he's going to be a speed rusher. He's not a coverage guy. And so he's kind of our 4th defensive lineman. So if you think about it, our defensive line would look like this. It would be Deron Payne up the middle. You're going to have Rashawn Gary on one side and Cleveland Farrell on the other. And then O'Shawn Mathis would be coming kind of off that left outside linebacker, mostly as the 4th defensive lineman, basically. So kind of an undersized blitzing linebacker, which is the role that he would play in this defense. Now, if we lose out on Rashawn Gary, we're going to just hope to plug and play with maybe a J.J. Watt. And there's, of course, there's still the draft. But if you can go into a draft not needing certain things, it's all just bonus at that point. It's all just, icing on the cake, because now if there's a defensive end I like there, great, I'll pick him. And he can just kind of sit behind J.J. Watt for a year. And then we can develop him, and it'll be plug and play the year after on a much, much cheaper player. But I'm not forced to, right? I don't have to make the decision of like, well, I like player B better than this defensive end, but dang, we need defensive ends so badly. Now I'm forced to pick it, right? So if I can go in, especially in these low risk contracts, and find guys that are going to fit this system, it makes the most sense to do it that way. Now, similarly, as we look at the last 2 remaining defensive players that I'm offering contracts to, we have free safety Mike Edwards and strong safety Amani Hooker. We have literally no one at strong safety, as you can see there in the depth chart part in the middle of the screen. And at free safety, not a whole lot there as well. And so, as I just mentioned, I don't like to really throw money around at guys who are kind of like, 27 and 78, exactly like Mike Edwards here. It will allow us a little bit of draft flexibility. Now, he's offered a contract 3 years, $4.5 million. So if he starts for us this year, I can live with it. It's not the best. It's not my favorite thing, but it's kind of like buying an insurance policy for $4.5 million when you have the cap space to do it. That's what Mike Edwards would be on this particular team. If we draft a guy who's got a lot of upside, great. Mike Edwards might be a sub linebacker. He could be, playing the big nickel, that kind of thing. There's a role. Same thing with Amani Hooker. It might just be like we first off might not get either of these guys. If both of them sign, I could see one of them probably starting, whereas we maybe develop a rookie at the other position, and then the other one becomes again like a big nickel linebacker or the third safety, that kind of thing, which is still, a role that you're going to use a lot in Madden, especially with the league being so pass heavy. And so I don't really mind it. It's kind of potentially filling 2 holes. Amani Hooker's just 25, so he's got room to develop still. He's not going to really probably even get a dev trait or a dev upgrade this year. I should say, I'm sorry, an overall upgrade this year. But still, he can hold his own. He's a pretty decent zone safety with pretty good speed for a strong safety. And again, injury rating's a bit of a concern there. So, but his contract's even less, right? He's looking at about $3.5 million over 2 years. So $3.5 million. Heck, this guy could just play special teams and be a backup for that price. That's not really all that bad. These are guys that I probably wouldn't even look to offer a contract to, but since the AI it's kind of now or never, because these guys might sign. And I don't want to go into the draft with just like blatant holes everywhere. Unless it's, I have the second overall pick. I kind of know what I'm doing with that pick. You can have a hole there because you're going to plug it. But these other ones, I just don't know. I am a big believer in letting the draft come to me and not forcing any particular position. And that's the reason behind these last two defensive signings, and Amani Hooker and Mike Edwards. Now, there's only two offensive players, even though we had the worst offense in the league, that I'm making contract offers to. And I'm kind of going against the grain a little bit here and offering money to a running back. Now, as I said before, it's a very low risk, almost an insurance thing. I need a complimentary back with DeAndre Swift. He had a lot of touches last year. He's in a contract year. I probably am not going to re-sign DeAndre Swift because he's not a scheme fit. He's more of an elusive back, really, really nice player for us, but he's not really a guy that I think is going to fit. I think Alexander Madison could be. And I signed him to a 1-year deal because he's either a guy that we could look to extend during the season if we kind of, by then we're going to know what the draft looks like and whatnot. Or if we end up drafting a power back that's going to fit this offense better, we can then let Madison walk and then let that rookie develop this rookie year, or this his first year here, and then he will fill in for Madison. So we basically let Madison and Swift go, and then just kind of go with the rookie that we would draft this year. Since I don't exactly know what's going to happen, Madison works again similar to the insurance policy we talked about earlier with some of the defensive players. It's a low risk deal. $5 million's a little bit more than I want to pay for a running back, but he's a star dev. He's just 25. He's a power back, and at the very least, he's going to be a nice complementary back here who can come in and probably do some damage here. So injury rating of 88. He has two of the traits that are just absolute must for me, which is fight for yards. Must with my running back. Must fight for yards. And I love the for all hits covered ball. I can live with it if it's like the next level down, which is like I think like some hits or something like that, or big hits. But for all hits is very, very useful. So he's not very fast, just 86, but again, that's fine. He's just there to kind of just do the dirty work. Just get in there and kind of get the third and twos and things like that. And I think Alexander Madison could be a nice fit for us. We have a kind of a backup plan there if we don't get to Madison, and that would just to be to bring back Jamal Williams, who again 28.76, but we don't need to do that right now. He wants a 3-year deal. He wouldn't be getting a 3-year deal. It'd be kind of a plug and play. But I'm pretty confident I can find a running back, a power running back, before the season starts, and possibly again in the draft, which is again just right now just kind of going with the low risk. $5 million. The reason I'm going with Madison over a cheaper kind of just plug and play Jamal Williams is that Madison offers us the ability to pivot and re-sign him and use him beyond this upcoming season. And so that brings us to the last offer that I'm making, and that's to the tight end that we signed at the beginning of the season last year as our tight end 2, who had a really nice year for us, Will Dissly. We were not able to get a contract extension done with him. He wanted to test free agency, and he's not really getting a ton of action. But I really like him, even though we have Hawkinson, because I run a lot of 2 tight end sets, and I want that second tight end to be able to block. And so if I actually click over to blocking, you can see he's got a 75 block rating, which is really good for a tight end. He's like an undersized center, 6'4", 265, who can also catch the ball. He's a good possession guy. We already had the vertical threat in Hawkinson. To me, he's like the perfect complement at tight end for to TJ Hawkinson. So this guy just fits. And so again, 2 years, 10 million is $5 million a lot to pay to a backup tight end? You probably. Could I find a blocking tight end late in the draft? Maybe, but I don't know. But again, kind of an insurance thing here. If he comes in and plays, his bonus is only $2.5 million per year. He might just play one more year with us. I mean, heck, I could cut him before the season started if I wanted to. We're only out $5 million. We have the cap space to maneuver. This is another reason why it's important to not spend every last cap dollar you have every single offseason. You need to leave yourself wiggle room so that you're not just kind of go for broke or you're all in on one thing. It's kind of like how you diversify a financial portfolio, right? I mean, you need to have different options available. You can't put all your eggs in the one basket and hope that things work out. It might, but most of the time, as time goes on, it's not going to work out that way. So Will Dissly, again, just kind of fits a role. It's a low risk, and it allows us some more draft flexibility because there are some tight ends I do like in the draft, especially late. But now we're not forced to do it. If we get one, great. Will Dissly's here another year. We plug and play the tight end we draft maybe towards the end of the draft here for the following season. One last thing I wanted to mention about free agency is really a compliment to some of the improvements I've seen in the Madden game engine. You're looking at 2 uh, two of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL here at the top of the free agent list, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. So let's see what the heck's going on here. Why do these teams decide to let their quarterbacks walk essentially to free agency? And I can show you why. And I think it's really, really, really cool. Let's start with the Packers here. So first off, we know they have Jordan Love. Not a surprise. Star Dev, 24 years old. That makes a lot of sense. And again, this is the compliment. They're letting him walk. They're getting cheaper at quarterback. They're wanting to develop a guy who's still at draft age, 24, and they feel he's a scheme fit. This makes a lot of sense. Not only that, they actually drafted Malik Willis the previous year. And so if you're thinking like, well, geez, this is crazy. Why did they draft Malik Willis? They already had Jordan Love. First off, if you've seen Jordan Love play in real life, I would see why they might want to take a Malik Willis. He has not looked very good. And so you can never have too many good quarterbacks on your team, especially when you're not sure what the hell you have in the first one you picked. So just a year younger, they have two guys to look at. So regardless, we're going to leave that discussion alone. Did they need to draft Malik Willis when they already had Jordan Love? I don't know. That's maybe another discussion, but guys, it's happened, right? We had Josh Rosen in real life drafted by the Cardinals. The following year, they draft, what's his face? Kyler Murray, right? So it happens. It's a good problem to have if you have to move one of these guys. Both are star dev. Malik Willis looks like he's going to be the guy they go with. He's much higher rated. He's got less of a penalty, obviously. So, but hey, riding out with two quarterbacks, not the worst thing. So it makes perfect sense that the Packers let Aaron Rodgers walk. And as a Lions fan, I'm pretty excited about that. Now, what about the Bucs? They let Tom Brady go, and Sam Howell, drafted the year before. I forget when he was drafted. Let's see. He was a first round pick, 28, so towards the end of the first round. So this made sense. They picked him. He sat a year, and I don't really know if they developed him. I'm not really exactly sure, how things looked. You can see he hasn't really played very much, but I mean, he at least got to sit. And a 74, second year quarterback's not the worst thing. Normal dev, but it's even with a normal dev 74, this guy might not be a world beater by any means. But it's nice to see the Bucs intelligently move on, and there's an argument there. Tom Brady's still good at 46 years old. He's an 85 overall, but they've made the decision to move on, and it at least makes sense. And so I know there's a lot of complaints out there about the, kind of the QB intelligence in this game or roster management and that sort of thing. But hey, nothing's perfect. And even if you looked at real life examples like we just did, guys, the Dolphins have been rumored about trading Tua. There's all kinds of stuff out there where if you see it in real life, and if it happened in the game, you'd kind of roll your eyes at it. So I thought it was cool to see the Bucs and Packers move on from their aging quarterbacks and kind of go with a bit of a youth movement with the previous drafted players that they acquired. Okay, so let's take a look and see what's happened. We've advanced to week 2, and we have some results. So Amani Hooker has accepted our contract at strong safety. Mike Edwards, the free safety, has also accepted the contract. Madison, the running back, has accepted our offer. And most importantly, Deron Payne has accepted our offer. I'm super pumped. We're going to come back to that in a second. We did have a couple of rejections. Cleveland Farrell and Rashawn Gary have rejected it. I'm assuming they've signed with other teams. But we got some big pieces here. And most importantly, Deron Payne, who by far, in really 2 years, has been my number one target. He's a guy I actually even tried to trade for during the season last year, and nothing was really getting done. So super, super pumped to see these guys. Really just the results here of the first free agency, and even a little bit relieved that the $25 million a year for 5 years offer we were offering Rashawn Gary. It didn't work out. He wasn't an exact fit or anything like this, but just kind of one of those things that was, for his age and his quality of player, it was worth taking a shot. But super excited to get these defensive pieces in place. I think Madison's going to make a lot of sense, and we'll have to go back and revisit here and just kind of see how we want to readjust the defensive line, because we did have two guys that were kind of penciled in to be on the defensive line for us that aren't going to be here. So let's take a look at that next. So we're going to take a look at the defensive line approach again in just a second, but let's take a look and see where the recent signees do fit in. As I mentioned, Madison is going to fit into that halfback 2 role. As far as him being a specialist, he will be the power back for this year. And again, we'll just have to kind of see what we do with these two guys at the end of the year. Swift's had a really, really nice year. Even if he's not a scheme fit, he's still productive. So, but it gives us a few options here, which is always nice. On defense, the two safeties have just slotted in for now. Again, we could still upgrade. If not, these guys will get us through. It's not the end of the world. Deron Payne, of course, centerpiece of this defense now. Huge signing, number one target by far. Where does that leave us as far as the defensive line, or at least even just kind of pressuring with the defense as far as getting to the quarterback and whatnot? Well, Mathis, to me, the more I look at it with his size and whatnot, even though he's a left end in this offense, or I'm sorry, in this defense, as I mentioned, he is going to be a left outside linebacker. This is just his spot, the speed rushing spot here to kind of bring some pressure to that right tackle. That's where he's going to need to be, as weak as our defensive ends still are. I think I could actually get by with Levi Wanzarike even being a starter this year. He's still just 25. He's only normal dev, but he's just a big body. He can do a little bit of power rush, a little bit of run stopping. He's 290. He just kind of works. If he's my third defensive lineman, I can deal with that. It still leaves a huge hole here. We don't even have anybody. This is just a linebacker that's just in the depth chart. But we don't have anybody. We don't have a single right end on our team at this point. So it is by far right now our biggest need, along with quarterback, which we're planning to fill at the top of the draft. But even that, I'm actually giving some consideration here as far as how do we approach this, because again, these are our two big holes here on this team. Is the, again, quarterback spot, defensive end. So let's go take a look here and just see kind of how things are looking with free agency. I've actually even pivoted off of what we were talking about earlier. By the way, league signings, so the guys that we lost out on, defensive end, we lost out on Cleveland Farrell. He signs with our rivals, the Vikings, so we will be seeing him, just not as much as we were hoping. And we lost out on Rashawn Gary, who signed with the Eagles there for less money. So again, I like that Madden kind of takes into the team structure and kind of their approach and whatnot. So we lost out on him, and that's okay. That's not the end of the world. So that kind of leaves us, where do we go from here? And J.J. Watt now has an offer. I was able to sign him. I could have signed him for probably $8 million. I put an offer together just now that was $9 million, and it was still way below what the Packers were offering. And so I started taking a closer look at J.J. Watt at 34 years old and said, even on a one-year deal, is this a guy we want? And I'm going to say no, because of his injury rating being a 76. This is a dude who's just going to get hurt by like week 2 and probably be out half the year. We're passing on J.J. Watt. So even if he goes to the Packers, that's fine. Let them spend the money on him. It's kind of a cool storyline with him returning to the state of Wisconsin. But J.J. Watt's not a fit for us. I'm giving some consideration now to Dean Lowry. Even though he's just kind of a one-trick pony, power rusher, it would allow us to move Levi Wanzarike to the right end, which is a run stuffer role in this 3-4 defense at 290. It would fit for him. And even bigger, Dean Lowry, 296, is more of a power rusher. He'd be perfect for that left end spot. So Dean Lowry now actually becomes a fit. There's nothing here that really has me raising any red flags about him. He's just kind of a big body guy. He's only going to play first and second downs, but on a one-year deal at $5 million, it's something I'm considering. There is some competition there, so we probably will have to go up into that $5.5 million range to get him, but we have the cap space to do it. It's not a huge deal. The other guy we're looking at is Zadarius Smith, who I wasn't looking at all now, but we are giving some consideration because, again, he would fit really nicely into that left end role, that power rushing role at 272, and this would be an even better fit for Levi Wanzarike to move over to the right end. Again, nothing here that has me really worried about. Zadarius Smith, 86 injuries, a little low, but it'll get up to a 90 with our defensive coordinator, so I can live with that. What I'm not really thrilled about is a 3-year deal for someone who's 30, but we're desperate enough that I might just have to do it and just kind of worry about this problem later on. I have, however, kind of hit my dollar max that I'm willing to do on this, which is about $20 million a year for this guy. It's a massive overpay. I don't want to do it. It's why I wasn't even looking at him the first go around in week 1. And we're still his third choice, it looks like. So I'm not expecting it. If he signs with us, great. It would solve a problem. It's like I'm kind of willing to make that trade, a financial burden to solve a defensive end problem, which is such an important position. But if he doesn't sign, I won't lose any sleep over it. But outside of that, there's really not a whole lot that we can really do at this point, other than maybe address it in the draft. And that brings me to my next point, which is addressing defensive end in the draft. And so here we still have Rodgers and Brady sitting at the top of the free agent market. I'm starting to think a lot of teams just don't have the money for these guys. But guess who does? The Detroit Lions, with 43 nearly $1 million in cap space still, even with the Zadarius Smith contract offer. We could bring one of these guys in. Now, do we develop a quarterback? Do we just develop Tanner Morgan behind him? I don't know, but it would give us some flexibility. So, point being, there's not a defensive end rated this high that we can bring in, but there is a quarterback, and that would allow us to pivot, even if it is just for a year or two. These guys are both still great quarterbacks. It could buy us another year or two at that position, and hell, we're competitive now overnight. Kind of depends on what the Jaguars do here with the first pick. If you look at the most recent mock, Miles Murphy's a guy I really like. If I had the first pick, boy, it'd be really tough. It'd be between one of these guys, and I might even go Miles Murphy at this point, knowing that I could sign Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, as crazy as that may sound as a Lions fan. This would work. So what if the Jaguars were to pick Bryce Young? Well, then that's probably what's going to happen. Is I would probably pick Miles Murphy, and I would sign one of those quarterbacks to be our starter, and then maybe I go and get a different quarterback later on. Another guy I like in this particular draft class is going to be drafted, according to this mock, a little bit later in the first round. Actually, he's not even there, but it's the quarterback out of Clemson. So this would be another option potentially. And I think he'd be a really good fit as a developmental piece. He had a positive news story. I don't even know how to say this guy's name, but he's a scheme fit, 6'4", 250. This would be the perfect guy to sit behind Brady or Aaron Rodgers. Just 21 years old. What kind of has me a little worried about him again, he's got great arm strength, elite arm strength here on the bottom, you can see. I love the play action, but the throw accuracy deep and short. He's a pretty good mid thrower, but those other parts I'm a little bit worried about. But again, if this guy were to fall, even certainly our second round pick, that'd be a really nice pickup. I don't know if I would use the 12th overall pick on him, but if he were to fall, that could certainly be a possibility. And according to the latest mock, he will fall to the second round. So that's another option we're considering. And again, I think it's important as you're working on your team to, really, you almost have to kind of reassess each round of free agency here leading up to the draft. They're all little puzzle pieces that can work together that make a difference. So we lose out on Rashawn Gary, we lose out on Cleveland Farrell, but we're pivoting and we're going to roll the dice and just see again if we can bring in the Darius Smith, and maybe I also need to throw an offer out to Dean Lowry. So we get one of these guys, because it would solve the problem very similarly, to how our signing the safeties and whatnot did. My negotiations, by the way, right? If we click over to that and kind of look at what's left, Will Dissly is looking very, very unlikely. He's got a lot more interest now. I'm not really willing to go over this with some of the other guys I've seen in the draft that I think we can get late who would be blocking tight ends. Will Dissly would be a really nice luxury, but I mean, I don't want to be spending that much money on a backup tight end at this point. Even if we have the money, I think it's fine. Maybe I'll leave that offer out there and just see if he accepts it, but I don't really think he will. So again, that kind of leaves us just looking at, would we do something like sign an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady? Because even if we were to pick a quarterback first overall, these guys aren't long-term solutions. It might still make sense, and it's truly something I'm giving some thought to. I don't know which one I would lean towards, but gosh, it would be really strange to see one of these two guys in a Lions uniform. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not looking at this talented of players who could fill a position of need on a team that's been really, really bad for a while, especially when you can still develop, of all positions, a quarterback kind of in the background. So here is how my free agent offers are going to look going into week 2 of free agency, with one caveat. You're seeing right here an offer to Aaron Rodgers for an even $30 million, half of which is in bonus. It would put us pretty close to being up against the cap with still some depth to fill later. I'm not comfortable doing that just yet. I have 3 offers out there, none of which I'm really expecting to sign. I've reached my max with Zadarius Smith that I'm comfortable going to, Will Dissly, and we've also put an offer out to Dean Lowry, a 1-year deal, $6 million. Could go a little bit higher on him, but again, him being 29 and just the 76 and just really a power rusher, as I mentioned, I think I would rather just even develop a guy who's like a 72, 73, who's younger. Um, but if he signs, great. It's nice to have the depth. And really, I'm not expecting any of these players to sign. We're the only team interested in Rodgers and probably the only team that can afford him. I looked at him and Brady. I like the abilities that Rodgers has. He has better arm strength than Brady, and he's younger. And I just think it'd be a hilarious storyline to see him come in and reverse the Lions' fortune, maybe beat the Packers and that kind of thing, and finally win the Lions their first division title. And it works. And it also allows us to still pick a quarterback in the first round without feeling silly about it. We can easily develop that quarterback behind Rodgers in the background. It actually just makes more sense than I was even really willing to give it credit for. Where it doesn't make sense right now is financially. I really don't want all of these players to accept. So for now, we're going to withdraw the offer one more time on Rodgers and just go with this. If all of these guys sign, which I really don't think they will, there's going to be a bit of a problem because we're going to have too many of these guys. I really don't need Zadarius Smith and Dean Lowry. But it's a good problem to have. I can always cut Lowry later on. He provides some depth, what have you. We'll see how the budget and stuff looks here after this week. But guys, we might be making a move for Aaron Rodgers and still bring in Bryce Young at quarterback. Okay, so we're now into offseason and free agency week 3. As expected, all 3 players have rejected the contracts. So let's go take a look and see who they signed with. And we can also take a look and see who some of the other top free agents that we didn't look at in the previous week have signed with. So Quentin Nelson, by the way, with the Raiders. Tyreek Hill actually went to the Packers. So again, something for us to think about. We saw Rashawn Gary. Zadarius Smith, who just signed, went to the Vikings. So we've lost out a couple players now to the Vikings, and also seen some really high caliber players go to the Packers as well. Marquise Brown goes to the Bucks. J.J. Watt signs with the Packers. So again, not a huge surprise there. I did like Sean Murphy-Bunting. He signs with the Falcons, but again, we had some pretty good depth there at corner for now. So, and there's actually a pretty deep corner draft, so didn't want to push that too much there. Jarvis Landry signs with the Patriots, and let's see, just kind of scrolling through. Van Ginkel signs with the Packers as well. And let's see who we lost the tight end to. So Dissly signs with the Jets. Dean Lowry then is the last guy to check, and he signs with the Falcons. So that's okay. That kind of leaves us with some options, I guess. And I was previously talking about, do we go after Rodgers? Do we go after Brady? We still don't have any other teams interested. And I had said that I was going to make Rodgers an offer this week, but we're a week away from the draft. No other teams are interested in signing these guys. It's very possible that no one does. So I think with that in mind, I'm going to wait as well so that I'm not locking myself in and I can actually get a look at the draftees, right? So, I mean, again, the plan still right now is to go with Bryce Young at quarterback. If he comes in with a hidden dev trait, which I highly suspect he will, he had a positive news story. He's a first-round talent, top of the class potentially. Could be the best player in the draft. I don't know. I don't mind getting him going right away. He's an athletic guy who I think is going to benefit from playing time. He's going to rack up stats one way or the other. And that's going to help his development a little bit here in Madden. So I'm probably more likely to start a quarterback in Madden because you really have nothing to lose by starting a rookie quarterback in Madden, where you do risk a little bit in real life, of course. So still would prefer to go with Bryce Young, even though it would be fun to play with Aaron Rodgers for a year. I'm just not really sure what that does for the franchise other than cost us $30 million, which matters in franchise mode when you're in the owner mode, I should say. So Again, that's a big chunk of money that you could put towards, stadium upgrades, that sort of thing. So it's not just free money, so to speak. So it is something else to think about. But yeah, I think for the most part, we're probably done with free agency, more or less just going to be keeping an eye on some guys as we head towards the draft. Okay, so it's time to start the draft, and our game plan is pretty simple. It's much different than the first draft I had, where we were at pick 5, and I was just really just kind of left with whatever is left with that top 5 projection. This year, it's pretty solid what we're doing. We're really hoping Bryce Young falls to 2. We're 90% sure he will, and he will be the pick at 2. Even with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers still sitting out there, that could be kind of plugs. Guys are still options for us. No one signed those guys; they're still there, and I got no problem going with Bryce Young at quarterback. And the reason I didn't sign those guys, as I mentioned, Brady or Rodgers just yet, is it gives us a chance to take a closer look at Bryce Young, see if we can kind of roll with him to start the season. And if not, if we don't feel he's quite ready, if he comes in, maybe he's like, I don't know, 72, 71 overall, we can just kind of work on his development. But I think it's going to really benefit him, as I mentioned, to get playing time. It's going to help him progress quicker. So it's most likely we're going to go with Bryce Young as the starter. If we don't get him, the next guy up for us is going to be Miles Murphy. And so luckily, they're both two of our biggest needs. Madden actually got my needs perfect this time. It has my number 1 need is quarterback. My number 2 need is right end. And then after that, it's outside linebacker is our 3rd need. And I'll get to that in a second. But, really, if they go Bryce Young, I got no problem going Miles Murphy. I like both these guys a lot. I think Miles Murphy might even be a better player. He's already a scheme fit. But we're so desperate at quarterback that I have no problem just kind of sitting tight, not trading up to 1 or anything like that, and taking Bryce Young. Or again, worst case, Miles Murphy is going to be a fantastic consolation prize, as he had a depth story as well. So either one of these guys, I think, are going to be stars in this draft class, and we are happy to take either one. At pick 12, we're probably going to go with one of these linebackers is the plan. So these guys would be, they might actually fill that role I just talked about earlier that O'Shawn Mathis has right now, that kind of speed rusher from the left outside linebacker spot. This would move Mathis to a speed rushing end. He'd be a little undersized for 3-4. But again, it would work. I think it would be okay. Then these guys would fall into the linebacker spot, or in the kind of the traditional 3-4 sense, we could use both those guys as linebackers. But you're going to have a power rusher and a speed rusher, and neither guy can really cover all that well. So unless it's like a for sure, run down, something like that, I probably wouldn't want to use both those guys at the linebacker spot, especially when we're so weak at defensive end. So anyway, that's the game plan. After that, we're just going to let the draft come to us. I can just kind of flip through and show you kind of my general draft board. And it kind of goes through even some guys I mentioned day 3, again, finding some role-playing running backs, some role-playing tight ends. And then these are guys that I didn't necessarily have on my list, but did have positive draft stories along with them. So again, we'll just keep an eye. If one of these guys falls, it makes sense, there's a fit. Hey, there's bigger problems to have. There's a lot of good players here. That could be fits for this Lions team as we finally, hopefully, look to turn the corner in 2023. All right, well, that's going to do it for this video. We went through really just kind of a basic, kind of like an aggressive and conservative offseason approach. I think we were pretty aggressive in some definite players I liked, needs that we needed to fill. We got Daron Payne, but we were also very conservative in the sense that we didn't force things. We didn't rush off and sign a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. We didn't really go crazy and try to overpay for Rashawn Gary or Jadarius Smith or anything like that. And so I'm happy with where we're at. I feel like we're in a much better spot now, a couple years into this rebuild with the Lions. And yeah, it's going to be draft time. So the next video is going to be the draft recap. I will kind of go through each pick, kind of show you what I'm thinking, what's happened, and so on. So be on the lookout for that. But guys, I'm Mike Lowe. I'm on Twitter at MikeLowe47. Always streaming franchise, sports, gaming kind of stuff. And yeah, I appreciate you guys checking out the video, and I will see you next time.